Alright guys, welcome to a very special video. I am sitting in my brand new 2024 Acura Integra Type S. Can't believe I'm saying that. 24 hours ago, I literally had no clue I would be walking into a dealership and 2 hours later walking out with the keys to this car. Now before you ask, I still have my 91 NSX and my 22 Subaru BRZ. The BRZ most likely is going to have to get sold at some point, sooner rather than later. Having 3 cars to maintain and insure is definitely not ideal, but this was a little bit, I would say, of an impulse purchase. Now given that this car only has 39 miles on the odometer, I'm not going to be doing a full canyon review, although we are on my local canyon road. I'm going to save that for a little bit later once the car has some more miles on it and it's a little bit more broken in. Today, I just want to give some context on why I bought this car. Now, word of warning, this might turn into a 15 or 20 minute rant. So if you're looking for some pulls all the way to 7,000 RPM and some aggressive driving in the corners, this is not that video, but rest assured that will come soon enough. Let's get going here, and I'll do my best to explain my very maybe inconsistent thought process that ultimately led to me buying this car. So for those of you who have been following my channel for a while, it'll come as no surprise that I track my Subaru BRZ quite heavily. And very recently, the engine failure issues due to oil starvation have gotten pretty out of hand. In the last couple of months, it became very well documented as to what led to all of those engine failures that we've been seeing on track. Now that's a story for another day, but why it's relevant here is that I was losing confidence in my ability to track my BRZ without risking catastrophic engine failure. And so naturally I started looking at potential replacement options for the BRZ. Now given that I'm very much a front engine rear wheel drive junkie, I love to go sideways on track, that didn't leave me a whole lot of options within my price range. I really wanted to keep it below $60,000 at the very high end, but realistically anything under like 45 grand, that was the sweet spot for me in terms of having a car that I can drive every day, I can drive on the track reliably, and not be so expensive that I would feel really bad about getting dings and inevitable little bits of damage that are gonna happen when you drive a car on track as hard as I do. And so I started looking at options like the Camaro SS1LE, the original BMW M2, even the Mustang GT Performance Pack. And all of those cars, they had their pros and cons, but ultimately what I realized is that $45,000 in the world of front engine rear wheel drive cars wasn't gonna cut it for me. I'm getting to that age where I care about creature comforts. I want a newer car with new technology, things like Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, driver assists, and so forth. And those older cars didn't quite do that for me. And at the same time, they didn't feel special enough to me as far as driving dynamics. That's excluding the SS1LE because I think that car drives fantastically, but I also couldn't really see myself in a Camaro for whatever reason. And so that led me to increase my target price point up to around $55,000. Now, the reason I chose that specific number is because the F87 M2 competition can be had for around 55 grand, a really clean manual example. And after talking to people who have owned those cars and having driven Evan's modified F87 M2 comp not that long ago, and having talked to other car YouTubers like Kevin Jabal and the Topher, they were all really gung-ho about the M2 competition being my next car. Dynamically, it's amazing. It's usable on a daily basis. It was within my price point. So up until yesterday, I pretty much was, to some extent, holding out for the perfect M2 comp to show up. But at the same time, I decided to put fully refundable deposits on 2 different cars. The GR Corolla Circuit Edition, which my buddy Chris hooked me up with, he transferred his deposit over to me. The car would have been at MSRP $44,400 for the specific one that was already tagged to my name. But even weeks before that, I put a deposit on the new Acura Integra Type S. I was told by my local dealership, Acura of Pleasanton, that there were roughly 20 people on the wait list, and that realistically, I should expect a lead time of 6 to 9 months. Well, guess what? That was 5 weeks ago. They called me yesterday. I was completely caught off guard, and they said, hey, the person in front of you on the wait list decided that for whatever reason, they didn't want blue anymore. They wanted to go for a different color, even though that person had been waiting for quite a while. I had probably half an hour or an hour to decide if I wanted it. And so I was definitely sweating bullets at that point, because my GR Corolla was right around the corner, and out the door it would have been at least $10,000 cheaper than what Acura was going to charge for this Type S, which I'll get to in a moment. And ultimately, this is a front-engine, front-wheel drive car, the exact opposite of what I really, really wanted, which was front-engine, rear-wheel drive. But either way, I decided to go into the dealership, only about 8 minutes from my house. The dealership even gave me a quick little test drive around the block. And I gotta say, I was immediately smitten with the Type S. Outside of it not being rear-wheel drive, this car has everything that I want in a dual-duty, daily drivable, practical little car that gets decent fuel economy, and yet you can rip it on back roads or even the racetrack with lots of performance, fun, and the key word, reliability. I was watching the Topher's recent video of his FL5 Civic Type R on track, and he was getting all sorts of liftoff sideways action. And that made me think when I watched it, which was before I knew I had a shot at getting this Type S so soon, maybe front wheel drive will be a fun experience for me. I've never had a front wheel drive track car. They've all been rear wheel drive, either front engine, mid engine, or rear engine. There are such good front wheel drive cars on the market today. The Hyundai Elantra N, the GR Corolla, which I know is all wheel drive, but it's again a front wheel drive based architecture, and of course the Type R and Type S. These cars are really tuned very specifically for driving dynamics and driving fun. And they've just gotten so good at engineering these front wheel drive or front drive based all wheel drive cars to be dynamically amazing. The lap times show that. I mean, the Type R and Type S are basically M2 competition levels of performance on track, and with a lot less power. I warmed up to the idea of trying something new. It wasn't so much a matter of, oh, I have to cope with front wheel drive now. It was more an opportunity for me to try something I've never had before. Ultimately, I don't have to keep this Type S for life. In fact, I definitely won't. And like I said, when I drove the Type S just down the street and back, I realized there probably isn't a more well-rounded performance car on the market today for less than $60,000. You can argue all you want about, you know, the SS1LE being a way faster, more visceral driving experience, and you know what? I would agree with you, but as a daily driver, which is ultimately 80% of how I'm using this car, this thing absolutely knocks it out of the park. I've just been driving it around the last 37 miles in comfort mode for the most part, everything in its softest setting, and this thing is supremely comfortable. The suspension is nice and supple and compliant, which is something I didn't really like about the FL5 Type R, even in comfort mode. Suspension compliance is super important, and so is overall build quality and low NVH levels. The Type S, as you probably all know, has a little bit more sound deadening than the Type R. So even though we do have these Michelin PS4S tires, which are known to be a little bit loud and drony on the freeway, overall this car is really pretty quiet and refined. And I'm gonna get into all of those details once I spend some more time with the car. I'm just as excited as you guys are to start really seeing what this car can do when pushed. But as a pure daily driver right now, this thing couldn't be better. I was able to make full use of this hatch just yesterday, put in a full-size, actually kind of an oversized luggage, as well as some carry-ons and backpacks in that hatch. It fit no problem at all, something that I've never had in a daily driver. Even my old E39 5 Series trunk was not nearly as cavernous I've been averaging over 28 miles per gallon this morning. This car has a realistic range of around 400 miles if you're just driving conservatively. These might sound like the most boring possible things to be talking about coming from me, the guy who is daily driving a ratty-ass S2000 for a few years. But like I said, once you get a little bit older and more mature, not that I'm old or mature, relatively speaking, compared to where I was 6-7 years ago, I can definitely appreciate some of the, I guess, finer things in life, if you will. I mean, look at this. We're cruising around at 70 miles an hour on the freeway. Outside of a little bit of tire noise, this thing is silent. We have the exhaust valves closed. We have the driver assist. We have lane departure warning, adaptive cruise control, everything I could want. And this glorious 6-speed manual transmission. It's light and easy to use, but has a very mechanical feeling for a front-wheel drive car. The ELS Studio 3D sound system, by the way, is absolutely fantastic. I wouldn't call myself a really nuanced audiophile, but I can appreciate a decent hi-fi system, and this is easily the best I've had in any car. It beats out what I used to have in my BMW, even my old Mercedes E-Class that I had for about a year. This is better. The best way I can sum up the last 40 miles that I've done in this car is that when you're just driving in comfort mode and just cruising around, this is really getting into entry-level luxury car dynamics and overall refinement. And so I'll be really excited to see if this car really does have a true dual personality. When I throw it into Sport Plus, turn everything off with the pedal dance and start, shifting at redline and putting that front LSD to work, if this thing really comes alive, I'm really, really hopeful. If it's anything like the FL5 Type R, this thing will be fantastic, I'm sure. But let me get into price for a moment, because I'm sure that's a lot of what you guys are wondering. Full disclosure, I did not use any of my relationships with OEMs or dealerships or the fact that I even have a YouTube channel at all in order to get this car. I literally went to the Acura website, spec'd out a Type S, put in my information, and within a day I got a call from Acura of Pleasanton, my local dealership here, saying that they sell the Type S at MSRP plus $1,000 of non-negotiable dealer add-ons, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I said, sure, I'll put down a $1,000 refundable deposit. They asked me which colors I wanted. I said, I'll take anything that's not gray or black or silver, white, blue, tiger eye pearl, red. Those were the 4 colors that I was interested in. They said the majority of the 20 plus deposits that were already at the dealer were for the white color. 5 weeks later, less than 24 hours ago, they gave me the call, and the rest is history. So the price I ended up paying for the car was right around $52.5 thousand. That was the MSRP, and they added just over $1,000 of dealer add-ons, which includes the tinted windows, which I think is like only 80% on the front, maybe 20 or 30% in the back. But the other things they gave me were just wheel locks and nitrogen-filled tires. Either way, it was non-negotiable. I figured, hey, $1,000 at least, I'm getting some tinted windows and wheel locks. And seeing how much a lot of dealers have been charging for markup on these cars, anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000, I figured at just over $53.5 thousand before tax, this car was kind of a steal. Now, why did I get this instead of a Type R? One very simple reason. I could not find a Type R at MSRP. If I could, the roughly, I think, $8,000 difference between the Type R and the Type S, I probably could not justify that difference. But at $10K over, at a minimum, that puts the Type R already above the Type S. And with a Type S, mechanically, you're getting identical hardware, same engine. In fact, this is tuned to have more torque than the Type R. It weighs basically the same, despite this having more sound deadening and more creature comforts. Same suspension hardware, just a different tune to the software. And we get things like the ELS sound, etc., etc. Honestly, between the Type R with 10K markup or more and a Type S at MSRP with $1,000 of add-ons, it was a no-brainer. Now, the other car I had a deposit on, like I said, was a GR Corolla Circuit Edition. $44,400 MSRP for that, no dealer add-ons. So out the door, it would have been about $10,000 less. But when it came down to it, having driven the GR Corolla Core and Circuit on multiple occasions, I already knew what to expect with that car. And the only real appeal of that car over this Type S would have been, one, the lower price, $10,000 savings. I mean, that's a decent chunk of change. But the other thing was, obviously, the Circuit Edition is a highly sought after limited production model. Were those two things enough for me to choose a car that is objectively worse in every single way? At the end of the day, I decided that no, it wasn't worth it. I knew that the FL5 Type R was on a much higher level than the GR Corolla from the factory. It's a far more sort of focused driving experience, sharper steering, sharper inputs, better seating position, way better interior and creature comforts and build quality. I decided I might as well just pony up the extra $10,000 for what I consider to be the better car in every single way. Was that a mistake? I hope not, but I'm definitely going to do a comparison between this and a GR Corolla at some point. I'll be doing comparisons of this car against many, many cars. Let me know what you want to see, and I'll try my best to make it happen. That was just a little bit of background history on how I found myself in a Type S all of a sudden. I'm still in disbelief, to be honest. Let me know what you think about my decision. Do you think the Type S was the right purchase, especially at the price I paid? Or do you think I should have gotten the GR Corolla Circuit Edition for $10,000 less? Or do you think I'm out of my mind and should have gotten an M2 Competition or some other crazy rear-wheel drive car? Stay tuned for tons more content with the Type S. Thank you guys for watching. As always, please subscribe if you have not already, and I'll see you all very soon.